What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another video. And as I alluded to in my 5K live stream, I did pick up some recent loose graded figures. One of them is AFA graded. 3 of them are UKG graded. And I wanted to show you those in more detail, give you a little insight, backstory, the history of the toy, things like that, what to look out for if you're trying to find one yourself. And 3 of the 4 of them are ones that I had on my want list for this year. Actually, I would say all 4 of them were, but one of them was kind of like, well, the opportunity arose, and I didn't think I'd ever see it again for sale. So I did pick up 2 from Rogue 5 Toys, Chris W., who was on the live stream. I did pick up 2 from him, and then I picked up 2 from the Muffin Man on eBay, and apparently he does watch the channel. So shout out to the Muffin Man. I really appreciate the 2 beautiful figures that you sent me in separate transactions. And the first one is related to my Luke Skywalker Hoth and Battle Gear mini run. I don't have much in the way of Luke Hoth, but I do have these 2 gorgeous mint-on cards that I've already shown on the channel in the past. The first one is the 47-back free 4-LOM offer ESB card. The punched example I picked up from Hakes, I don't know, maybe about a year or so ago. It's a yellowed blister 80 grade overall from AFA. And then this one I also picked up from Chris W. at Rogue 5 Toys, ungraded, and that's the debut card for Luke Skywalker, which is the 45-back Star Wars display arena offer. And I picked this one up ungraded from Chris W. over at Rogue 5, and I sent it into AFA, and it's an absolute stunner, one of the prides of my collection. It came back with an 80+ with AFA, beautiful unpunched card with no price sticker. Can't really do much better than that. Very, very, very tough to find that one, that debut card, especially with a clear blister. It's just absolutely stunning. So related to that is this one. I picked this up from Chris. This is a UKG 85% loose graded Luke Hoth, and this is the very tough to find no COO variation. So here is the label on that. If we can get my camera to focus. There we go. No COO. And this one was graded 85 with 85 subscores for the figure and paint from UKG. Now, these would appear on like ESB Palatoy card backs, which are always tough to find. Return of the Jedi Palatoy card backs. I've seen a few of those. And also the extremely tough to find Tri-Logo card back. So this is most likely the figure that would appear inside those blisters. And it's just an absolute stunner. I'm sure that there's a paleface Spanish PBP that would appear on Tri-Logos as well. But this is obviously just the straight no COO. It's not the paleface Spanish PBP variant. One I would like to pick up loose graded at some point in my collection. They don't pop up very often, and when they do, it seems like I never have the money to get it. But anyway, Chris gave me a very fair price on this one, and it's an absolute stunner, and I'm very, very happy to have that one. It's probably, I've seen maybe 3 or 4 pop up on eBay over the years that are no COO, graded UKG 85%, and I just, for whatever reason, have never had the funds to get it, but stunning figure, very kind of peach face. The interesting thing that I forgot to mention is that, you know, the color of the face is tough to tell the differences between all of these, but to me anyway, it looks like the debut card has a slightly different color shade. It's a little darker shade to the peach color to his flesh face versus this one, which has a more orange tint. And then this one is even paler. The no COO is even more pale than the Hong Kong that's inside this 47 back. So all 3 of these, I know it's probably subtle and probably something you can't see very easily, but all 3 of these have different tones to the paint scheme that was used for the face paint for Luke Skywalker Hoth. The next one is probably one of the best Vaders I've picked up in a long time. And looking at my Vader collection, it's probably the best one in terms of rarity. And I already had this one in my collection. This is a made in Taiwan COO Darth Vader. This one is graded 85 by AFA, and it says TW for Taiwan. That's where it was manufactured. But this is the more common made in Taiwan variant for Darth Vader. It's actually relatively easy to pick this one up. It's produced on Return of the Jedi card backs. The blacked out Ewoks mentioned that there were made in Taiwans for the early 12 backs for Darth Vader. Some of them, I don't know which ones. But there is a different Taiwan figure, and this is one I showed briefly in the live stream. This is the Taiwan only COO. And right now I'm going to put up some information that I found on Facebook as well as Rebel Scum that details a little bit of the information. So I'm going to hold my figure to the right here so this information can scroll. I found some past sales posts on Echo Base Vintage Variants, and then I found the information from Rebel Scum. And this is an extremely tough to find variant. I never thought I would actually have one in my collection. And as Chris said during the live stream, this is the only one he's ever held in his hands that is the Taiwan only COO. He's never held one in his hands before. And I can say the same thing. This is the first time I've ever gotten one of these in my hands. And I've never seen one for sale on eBay that's already been graded. Obviously there were some on Facebook that I've only found 2 past sales posts trolling through the history of Echo Base Vintage Variants. But this is an AFA graded example, and very, very happy to get it. Let me show you the grading label, because AFA is very specific with the information. It's an archival case, so it's a brand new case style, beautiful figure, and it's labeled Taiwan only COO, and it's graded AFA 80. The grade almost doesn't matter to me because it's just that difficult to find it. But let me give you some information as it relates to that, in addition to what I just showed you in the insert on the left-hand portion of the screen. But the figure is known to have really rough-looking seams around the helmet, as you can see here. Let's see if we can get a good focus of those seams. Right there. So you can see it's got really, really rough seams around the helmet. And this is actually one of the cleaner examples. The left-hand side, or excuse me, the right-hand side on your screen really shows it, if I can get this to focus. So you can see those very, very rough seams. It is also known to have a very, very rough textured cape. I heard from a few other collectors that there are 3 different cape types that this particular figure came with, but these only appeared for a very brief time on Toltoys Australian and New Zealand cardbacks. So that's why they are very, very rare. They have a very specific saber with a very thin tip. It's a translucent, very thin tipped saber that it came with. And the other big tell for this figure is that it has a club foot. It's a defect that was carried through all of the different ones that were made, these Taiwan only COOs. They have this weird kind of over mold, or whatever you want to call it, that caused deformations in that foot. And you can see it very clearly on that foot and in that insert. So it's probably what happened was, it's speculation on the part of in the forums on the Rebel Scum insert that I showed you, is that Kenner noticed how rough this figure was and how bad the mold was used to make this figure, so they very quickly stopped production of the figure and moved over to a much finer made in Taiwan. And you can see how much better the Taiwan is. It's got much better paint schemes. The chest area is also a little bit different. It's just a slightly different mold. The other thing I'll point out is on the face sculpt. It's got very, very pointy edges to the front of the face mask. You can see how much those little points protrude. It almost looks like a ballpoint pen. And that's what a lot of the collectors mentioned in the Facebook, or excuse me, in the Rebel Scum forum, is that they call it the ballpoint pen helmet, with these little front protrusions on Vader that are very, very pronounced, versus these, which are a little bit softer and not nearly as pronounced. So just some more information, probably more information that you need, but you can see how rough textured that cape is relative to the finer cape that was used on the Made in Taiwan COO. He also has a very wide leg stance. That's another tell for this Taiwan only COO. Look how wide his legs are versus the Taiwan figure, where his feet are much closer together. So again, some of the tells for this figure: wide leg stance, the big club foot, the very, very rough textured cape. Obviously on the back of the leg it says Taiwan instead of Made in Taiwan. And then the rough seams around the top of the helmet. And then the ballpoint pen kind of Vader helmet protrusions on the front of the helmet. So lots of different tells for this figure, but it's a very, very rare variant that probably not many of you care about. Chris W. listed it for sale on Rogue 5 Toys, and it sat for a very long time because it's not a cheap figure by any means. It's a very, very expensive figure. It's not nearly as expensive as like a double telescoping Darth Vader or a glass lead made in Brazil Darth Vader, but it's kind of that second rung down in terms of rarity and toughness to find. It's more expensive than a Lily Letty Darth Vader in high grade, but wow, what an awesome figure! And I now have 22 loose graded Darth Vaders between my licensed figures, baggies, and bootlegs, both Mexican and Polish bootlegs. So very, very cool figure, and I can't thank Chris enough for the very fair deal on both of those figures. The last one that I'm going to show you, last two I'm going to show you, are Spanish figures, and they are for my IG-88 run. And I picked these up, as I mentioned, from the Muffin Man on eBay. And I've got a pretty good run going now for IG-88 in terms of my loose graded figures. I've got a CAS 85 grade Polish bootleg unarticulated IG-88 that's with silver paint. They also do make this with kind of a rust color. It's like a rust brownish kind of gold color, but the silver is the more common, and that one is graded CAS 85. I also have a 90 grade Hong Kong silver eyes that I graded myself with CAS. This one I picked up on eBay ungraded for like 15 or 20 bucks, something ridiculous, and it came back with a 90 grade with CAS. So that's the Hong Kong silver with hollow eyes. You can see the very hollow eyes on that one. So that's one I already had in my collection. The next one I had already in my collection is a no COO. This is a no COO with kind of a silver body. That one is graded 85 with CAS. This is another one I sent in and got graded myself, and you can see the very hollow eyes there. Now, related to no COO is this one that I just picked up, and this is the Spanish PBP variant. This one just came in last week, and here is the grading label on that one. Smooth, no COO, IG-88 PBP. So this is the later Spanish figure, and it's graded UKG 90% with 90% subgrades. I can tell you that the Spanish factory, as I've mentioned in past videos, the figures have poor paint applications, they're poorly welded, and in general, they just do not have a high quality to the finish. So to get a 90 grade with UKG Spanish PBP is insanely difficult to do, and I paid a lot of money for it. Let me show you some of the differences for this no COO PBP versus the no COO straight. You know, this would be like on Palatoy card backs or the Tri-Logo. The first most noticeable difference is the eyes or the stalks on the front. These are solid stalks. They are not hollow like the no COO that I just showed you. The paint applications are much more faint, and this is like the blood red eyes. The blood red eyes is the one I'm going to show you in a second. This is just the PBP with the faint red paint application. So look how faint the paint is. The red paint applications are on the face for this one versus the very, very vibrant red that was on the no COO. So again, this no COO would appear on Palatoy card backs or Tri-Logos, which are very expensive. But it's a much more muted finish to the red paint applications on the face. Now, in terms of the COO, it's a very specific COO. It's got the smooth portion up top where the Hong Kong was scarred out, and then it's got the copyright with the LFL offset. Copyright 1980 with the LFL offset. Versus the no COO, where the copyright 1980 is a much different COO, and the LFL is lined up perfectly with the copyright mark. So that just gives you another data point there to try to so you can distinguish between the Spanish PBP, which you see now, with the smooth COO at the top with the offset LFL versus the no COO, where the LFL is perfectly lined up with the copyright. So it's a much different copyright, and obviously the eye stalks and the paint applications are much different. So again, is it overgraded? Potentially, you know, the bandolier does not have perfect paint relative to the no COOs and Hong Kongs in my collection, but I can tell you that this figure is extremely, extremely tough to find in high grade. My gut says that it would probably get an 85 with AFA, but it got the 90 with UKG, and I'm certainly not complaining. The next one I'm going to show you is the Spanish Poch figure. And for comparison's sake, I did pull out this Hong Kong that was already in my collection. Shout out to Rick, Ranger Rick. He's the one that sold me this on eBay. And this is the gray body Hong Kong figure with an archival case that's graded AFA 85. This is the early Spanish figure with the Hong Kong COO with the blood red eyes. So this is the blood red eyes variant. And for comparison's sake, I'm going to pull up the Spanish PBP that I just showed you. So this is the blood red eyes. You can see how deep and dark and red that Spanish Poch is versus the Spanish PBP, which is almost like an orange red and much more muted. So that's one telling difference there. Obviously, it's a Hong Kong COO since this is the early Spanish figure. All early Spanish figures, as a reminder, used Hong Kong parts that they imported from Hong Kong to the Spanish Poch factory. They then assembled and painted them in the Spanish Poch factory. So that's why they all have, or to my knowledge, they all have Hong Kong COOs. Again, here's the label. IG-88 Blood Red Eyes, Spanish Poch, Hong Kong COO, and this one is graded 80. Straight 80s for the subscores. Again, Spanish figures are very tough to find in high grade. And then I wanted to also show you the COO on this one versus the Hong Kong. Here is the gray body Hong Kong, and here is the Spanish Poch. So again, there's a difference with the COO. It's very faint and or a very subtle difference, but you can see that there, how those two compare. They use a very similar mold, but the LFL is just in a slightly different spot. It's a slightly tighter range with the font. You can see how much tighter and squeezed in the font is versus this one in the Hong Kong factory where it's a larger font and it's spread out more. So again, this kind of information, I don't know if you care about it. I know some of you do, but there are some tells to it. The other big tell for the Spanish Poch figure is what I call the robotic penne. And you can see it's got a little burr on his crotch area. You see that little tiny burr right there? And, that's the robotic reproductive organ that's sticking off of that figure. And this is a better, probably from the back, you can see that little burr there. That's another tell for the Spanish Poch IG-88. And that's mentioned in the Javier Rui Lopez book. So versus the Hong Kong, which has a very clean, smooth, Ken the Barbie doll type reproductive organ. It's very, very smooth there. So anyway, just some very detailed information as it relates to some of these very, very rare variants that I've managed to pick up over the last couple of months. We had the Taiwan-only COO Darth Vader graded AFA 80, the UKG 85% no COO Luke Hoth, and then, of course, the Spanish PBP and Spanish Poch. Where is he? The Spanish PBP graded UKG 90, and then the Spanish Poch graded UKG 80. So lots of cool information. I hope you enjoyed this detailed look at some of the rare foreign variants that are in my collection. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be back soon.